Okay, I'm going to make these fairly brief, right? I just want to take you through some of the key concepts in Chapter 3. And before I do that, I want to kind of preface it by saying that these first sort of 4 chapters form the foundation for all of the further analysis we're going to do. So Chapter 2 was all about understanding how to extract cash flows from normal financial statements. Okay, so in financial accounting, you learned how to produce and read the financial statements. In managerial accounting, you learned how to take the information that you actually need out of the financial statements and combine that in different ways to make internal decisions. And here in finance class, we're going to learn how to focus on cash flows. And to begin our analysis of cash flows, now that you know how to sort of extract cash flows out of financial statements, we need to think about how we can compare one cash flow to another. Okay, so that's kind of where we're going with these 2 chapters that are coming up, the time value of money, part 1 and part 2. So we're going to go through in some detail the basics of the time value of money this week, and then next week we'll go through a little bit more detail on the time value of money. So what do we even mean by that? What is the time value of money? Well, one key concept that you need to get your head around is that time itself has a value. Right? If somebody wants to borrow $100 from you and pay you back next week, you got to think about what else you have to do with that money in the next week. What are you going to miss out on if you don't have access to that money? Is rent coming due next week? Then maybe you don't want to loan your friend that money. Has your friend borrowed money from you before and not paid it back? Right? So not only does time have a value, but also you can value risk. Like if your friend isn't going to pay you back or hasn't paid you back in the past, then maybe you need to think about whether you trust them to do it this time, or whether you said, look, I'll give you $100 now, but you're going to give me $200 next week. Right? So you could make up for the risk by asking a pretty high sort of interest in this case on your loan. Right? So that idea that time has a value, and that time has a value not only for loaning $100 to your friend, but also for thinking about, what's the value of getting paid, $1,000 next year versus $900 now, right? This idea that in order to be able to compare cash flows, we need to take into consideration the element of time. Okay, that's the foundation of Chapter 3 and 4, and all of finance, as a matter of fact. And so as you go through the book, right, there's not a lot of content in Chapter 3. Okay, in Chapter 3, the first thing we look at is the idea of what's called future value. Okay, so future value is basically the manifestation of the idea of compounding interest. So, if the example that they give you is that, you invest $100 at 5%, and next year, of course, you have $105. And if you keep that in there, then you're getting 5% on that 105, right? And 5% growth on 105 means that you're going to have $5.25 of interest the following year. And so now, your money keeps growing because you are increasing it at a rate of interest, but you're applying that interest to the bigger base value every year. And so the future value of an investment increases by whatever percentage you are increasing in. So what that means from a mathematical perspective, if you look over here, right, we have the deposit times 1 plus the interest rate. Or if you do that multiple times, what that means is that the future value of your investment is the deposit, or the present value, times 1 plus the interest rate taken to the power of however many years that you've got in your investment. And the other thing I want to note is that interest and money are not the only things that we can apply this kind of growth rate scenario or concept to. And I'm looking at concepts here right now. We're not going to get into the real nitty-gritty math, because guess what? Excel will do it for you, right? So I want to, have you understand this, but when we go through it in Excel, it'll make more sense. I just want to get it through your head that, growth rate is sort of taking a value today, growing it at a percentage, at a percentage, at a percentage over many years, and you get to what's called a future value. And money is not the only thing that grows, right? Think about trees. We have an example in the book about trees growing at a particular rate over years. So likewise, right, when you look at a future cash flow, so what would you pay now in order to, have $1,000 next year? Right, so the future value is known, and then instead of, basically the flip side of interest is what's called a discount rate. And mathematically over here, you can see how that formula is derived. But the idea of present value, right? You can bring a future value back into the present time by applying the inverse of this interest rate analysis that we just did. That's called the discount rate. And the what that gives us is what we call the present value. And the present value of future cash flows is a phrase you are going to hear over and over and over and over and over again in this class and in any kind of financial world. This is like one of the most key and important concepts in all of finance. The idea of the present value of future cash flows. Now, that was just some basic vocabulary and concepts. I'm going to stop the video here, and then we're going to continue on with the content in the book. And this is, like I said, is going to be a very quick sort of conceptual overview. And then we'll start just doing some examples.